Have you ever wondered what a man would do if he came home earlier than expected, only to find his mother bruised, tied to a chair, and his wife sitting calmly with a glass of wine? What truth could possibly hide behind a scene like that? Before we go on, allow me to wish you peace and good health. Tell me, from which country and at what time are you watching this story? The soft February light settled over Lake Washington like a gentle shawl, tinting the neighborhoods of Bellevue in muted gold. Adrian Hale stepped out of his charcoal gray sedan, the engine giving a final warm hum before falling silent. He stood for a moment in the quiet driveway, the familiar scent of wet cedar drifting up from the yard after a night of rain. This home, its stone pillars, wide porch, and tall evergreens had always represented stability, a place he thought he had built carefully, piece by piece, for the people he loved. He just didn't know that peace could hide cracks small enough for sorrow to slip through. Inside, the house greeted him with its usual hush, broken only by the soft ticking of the old wall clock his mother insisted on keeping. The living room carried a faint hint of ginger tea from earlier that morning, and the knitted throw on the couch, one of Maylin's habits to keep the chill away, remained neatly folded. Everything looked ordinary, almost too ordinary. He loosened his tie, letting his shoulders drop after a long day at the firm. Being a financial strategist required stamina, and lately he had been stretching himself too thin. His mother would always remind him that no career was worth losing one's peace of mind, but he had brushed it off with the confidence of a man used to juggling numbers, deadlines, and expectations. He walked through the dining room, the hardwood floor creaking softly under his steps. A few framed photographs lined the hall, one of him as a little boy holding a red umbrella under the Seattle rain, and another of Maylin standing behind him, smiling with her shy, steady warmth. Next to it hung his wedding portrait with Celeste Ward, taken on a bright summer day when he believed the world was settling into place exactly as it should. Sometimes, when the light hit it right, Celeste's smile in the frame looked genuine. Other times, like tonight, it felt like a mask. Adrian glanced at the kitchen doorway. It was quiet, too quiet for a home with two women who should have been preparing dinner or chatting softly the way they used to months ago. He paused as a faint clatter echoed from somewhere deeper in the house. His brows drew together. Celeste's car was already in the garage, and his mother rarely moved around without letting him know she was nearby. He continued deeper into the home, the air thickening with a silence that felt almost watchful. Maylin had been living with them for nearly half a year now. After her arthritis worsened, he had insisted she move in so he could look after her, help with doctor visits, and keep her company. She had resisted at first. Immigrant pride ran deep, but eventually agreed. Adrian remembered carrying her suitcases up the stairs, arranging her room beside the window so she could see the lake, and promising himself he would make the rest of her life gentle. For a while, it felt as if things were settling into harmony. But gradually, small things changed. His mother spoke less. She spent less time in the living room and more in her room. She stopped leaving little notes for him on the fridge, notes in her soft handwriting reminding him to eat breakfast or wear a scarf on cold days. He noticed, but he had been too distracted to dig deeper. The subtle clues slid past him like fog rolling over the water. He stepped into the kitchen and found only stillness. The overhead lights cast a soft glow on the countertops. A single bowl sat beside the stove, steam barely visible, as if someone had been cooking but stepped away too quickly. Adrian picked it up. The faint scent of shiitake mushroom and ginger rose from it, his mother's comfort soup. The soup she made when she felt lonely, or when memories of Taiwan weighed heavily on her. He set the bowl down slowly. From the hallway at the back of the house came another sound, a murmur, a shift, something that felt like a breath caught in the walls. Adrian took a step toward it, heart lifting with a quiet worry. The house, which usually carried warmth even in silence, felt strangely hollow tonight. He had the sudden, unshakable sense that something had been happening in its corners while he was too busy to notice. A soft rustle came from the laundry room, followed by a gentle clink of ceramic. He moved closer, his pulse picking up. Before he could open the door, he saw a small paper crane lying on the floor by the threshold. One of his mother's, neatly folded, its wings perfect, its beak pointed with care. She made them when she was anxious, her hands searching for peace in tiny, familiar rituals. Adrian bent down to pick it up. The paper was warm, as if recently held. And in that moment, he felt for the first time in months that beneath the calm surface of his home, something quiet and wounded had been living unnoticed. The house felt different tonight, still the same roof, same walls, same soft glow of the lamps, but something inside it was asking to be seen. He slipped the paper crane into his pocket and gently pushed open the laundry room door. Inside, the soft hum of the dryer filled the silence, its warm air drifting upward in small breaths. The light was on, though dim, pooling over a small folding table pushed against the wall. There, beside a basket of neatly folded towels, sat another bowl, the same mushroom and ginger soup half-touched, as if someone had been interrupted. Adrian stepped closer, brushing his fingertips over the warm ceramic. A pair of wooden chopsticks rested across the rim, perfectly aligned the way Maylin always set them. She never liked to waste food. She always finished her meals, even the smallest portions. Seeing something left unfinished, a meal abandoned mid-bite, sent a tight worry through his chest. He looked around the room. A faint indentation marked the cushion of a small wooden chair. A fresh tissue lay crumpled in the trash bin, its corner stained with a blot of mascara. That struck him like a whisper of something unspoken. Maylin rarely cried, and when she did, she always excused herself quietly, believing tears were something one should not burden others with. As he stood there, absorbing the quiet evidence of his mother's presence, a soft vibration ran through the floor above him. Footsteps measured. Confident crossed the upper hallway. Celeste's steps. He knew her cadence, as well as he knew his own breath. A subtle anxiety threaded into his thoughts, something he had been brushing aside for too long. He turned off the dryer and listened. The footsteps moved, paused, and then continued toward the main staircase. Adrian stepped into the hallway to meet them. Celeste appeared at the top of the stairs, her hair pinned neatly, her posture immaculate as ever. She carried herself like someone expecting to enter a room and find everything in its place. "Oh, Adrian," she called down, her voice bright and smooth. "I didn't know you were home already. Long day?" He studied her face, every detail, every flicker of expression. On the surface, nothing seemed off. But beneath the polished tone, he sensed something taut and restless. He'd been sensing it for weeks, without knowing why. "Yeah," he answered, keeping his voice neutral. "Just got in. Have you seen my mom?" Celeste paused on the stairs. It was brief, barely a heartbeat, but enough for Adrian to catch. A hesitation, masked quickly by a pleasant smile. "She was in the kitchen earlier," she replied lightly. "I think she went to rest. You know how she gets in the evenings." He nodded, though the answer didn't settle comfortably inside him. She continued down the stairs, crossing the living room with deliberate grace, straightening a pillow as she passed the sofa, smoothing a rug that didn't need smoothing. It was her habit controlling the small details, keeping the house curated like a magazine spread. Maylin's presence had softened some corners of the home. Crocheted coasters, small bowls of dried plum candy, the gentle scent of eucalyptus ointment. Celeste tolerated it, at least in front of him. But now, watching her move through the room, he sensed a steadiness in her that didn't align with the quiet sadness lingering in the laundry room. Adrian crossed to the sliding door that faced the backyard. The reflection in the glass showed him both the soft glow of the lamps and his own faint outline. Beyond the yard, the lake lay calm, touched by the fading amber of evening. The scene should have soothed him. It usually did, but tonight it felt distant, like the world around him was wearing a different face. A memory rose unbidden. Lynn, sitting on the porch last autumn, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of jasmine tea. She had watched the leaves fall with the soft patience of someone who had seen many seasons, whispering that change often came quietly before it announced itself. He wondered if a quiet change had been happening right in this house, in places he wasn't looking. Behind him, Celeste called out, "Do you want dinner now, or should we wait?" Her tone was warm, practiced, familiar. But Adrian stayed at the glass door, his voice low. "I'll wait." Celeste didn't press. She simply nodded and headed to the kitchen, her footsteps fading. Adrian glanced once more toward the laundry room. The untouched soup, the folded towels, the paper crane in his pocket. Something in his home had shifted, and he was finally beginning to feel it. He didn't know exactly what was wrong yet, but one truth settled quietly inside him. This house, steady, beautiful, and familiar, was trying to tell him something. The next morning arrived wrapped in a soft gray fog drifting from Lake Washington, the kind that made the world feel quieter than usual. Adrian stood by the kitchen counter with a warm mug of coffee cupped in his hands, letting the gentle steam brush against his face. The house was still, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft patter of early drizzle tapping against the window. He glanced at the hallway toward his mother's room. Her door remained slightly ajar, just as she always left it a sign she didn't want to feel closed off from the rest of the home. He walked toward her room and knocked lightly. "Mom?" When no answer came, he opened the door a little more. The bed was neatly made, with the quilt she had brought from her apartment blue and white patchwork, worn soft by years. Her slippers were aligned at the foot of the bed. Her reading glasses sat on the nightstand next to an English workbook she practiced from each night. Everything in its place, except her. A small unease settled in his stomach. Adrian moved down the hall, checking the guest bathroom, then the back porch. No sign of her. But when he reached the front door, he paused. Sitting on the narrow entryway table were her house keys, resting atop a folded grocery bag. His mother never left her keys behind. Not once in the months she'd lived with them. He turned quickly toward the garage and opened the door. His mother's small, older sedan remained parked exactly where it always Saturday, so she hadn't driven anywhere. The question tightened in him. He found Celeste in the sitting room, scrolling through her tablet while sipping a latte, her robe tied neatly around her waist. Soft jazz played from the speaker beside her, a morning playlist she always used to start the day on a positive note. She looked up when he entered. "Good morning," she said brightly. "Coffee's fresh. Want me to pour another cup?" "Have you seen my mom?" he asked. Celeste blinked, then offered a faint smile. "She's probably outside. She tends to wander around the yard early. It relaxes her." Adrian frowned. "Her keys are here, and her car, and she never leaves without at least letting someone know." Celeste set her tablet aside. "Maybe she went for a walk around the block. Fresh air is good for her joints." "In this weather?" Adrian gestured toward the window, where rain streaked the glass. "She wouldn't." Celeste shrugged in a calm, almost practiced motion. "You know how your mom is. She likes routines we don't always understand. Don't overthink it." But Adrian didn't like how easily she brushed it off. Something felt off about the casualness in her voice, the way she didn't even look mildly concerned. He took another step forward. "What happened last night after I went upstairs?" Celeste's eyes flickered, a quick, almost imperceptible shift. "Nothing happened. We had dinner early. She said she was tired and went to bed." He studied her face carefully. The smooth confidence in her tone, the way her hands didn't fidget, the slight upward curve at the corners of her mouth. It was all too controlled, too polished. A response already shaped before the question came. He turned and walked toward the back of the house again, ignoring the puzzled call of his wife. He checked the laundry room. The bowl of soup was gone. The space tidied, as if trying to erase any trace of last night's quiet distress. The towels were folded differently now, stacked the way Celeste preferred, perfect edges, identical folds. He moved through the hallway, passing the family photographs once more. His gaze paused on one, his mother holding him as a toddler in front of a crowded Taiwanese market. Her smile, small but proud. He touched the frame gently. As he moved toward the kitchen, a faint sound drifted from outside the creak of the side gate. He stepped to the window and saw her. Malin stood in the far corner of the yard beneath the maple tree, almost hidden by its low branches. She wore a thin sweater and held her arms around herself against the morning chill. From where he stood, Adrian couldn't see her face, but her small posture, slightly hunched, told him more than words could. She bent down, picked up something from the ground, and tucked it into her pocket. Another crane, perhaps. He didn't wait another second. He slid the back door open and stepped into the misty, damp air. "Mom?" he called gently. She didn't startle. Instead, she turned slowly, offering him a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Good morning, son," she said softly, but he could see the redness around her eyelids, the faint tremble in her hands. Something inside the home had wounded her, and now he felt it pressing against the edges of the morning. Adrian stepped across the damp grass, feeling the weight of the morning settle on his shoulders. The maple branches above them dripped softly from last night's rain, each drop falling with a quiet patience. Maylin stood still beneath the tree, her small frame almost blending into the muted gray of the day. She pressed her hands together as if warming them, though the morning chill wasn't harsh enough to explain that gesture. He approached slowly. "Mom, are you feeling all right?" Her smile wavered, and she lifted her chin with the same practiced grace she had carried through countless difficult moments in life. "I'm fine. Just needed to breathe some fresh air." The house felt a little tight this morning. "Tight?" he gently echoed. She hesitated before answering. Too quiet, maybe. He watched her closely. She always chose gentle words, never sharp ones. But today, even the soft edges carried a quiet ache. She reached into her sweater pocket and pulled out a small paper crane, its wings slightly damp. She smoothed it carefully between her fingers, as if calming the tiny bird. "I don't like to make trouble," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes it's easier to come outside for a few minutes." Adrian's stomach tightened. "Did something happen last night, after I came home?" Maylin lifted her gaze to him, her eyes warm but tired. "No need to worry, son. You work so hard. I don't want to add heavy thoughts to your day." "Mom," Adrian stepped closer. "I need you to tell me if something isn't right." Her fingers stilled on the crane. For a moment, she looked as though she might open up, might let the walls slip just enough for him to see what weighed on her. But then her shoulders rose and fell in a small, resigned breath. "Everything is fine," she said again, with a firmness that felt more like protection than truth. "Let's go inside. You haven't eaten yet." And she moved toward the door, walking slowly over the slick grass, leaving Adrian standing beneath the maple branches. He watched her go, noticing the careful way she held her arms, the small sway of her steps. This wasn't the mother he remembered, strong, steady, carrying years of hard work with unwavering dignity. Something was chipping away at her spirit. He followed her back toward the house. Inside, the warm air met them with a stillness that felt sharper now. Celeste stood by the kitchen island, pouring herself another latte from the machine. She offered a bright smile when she saw them. "There you two are," she said lightly. "I was just thinking about breakfast. Maybe we should—" But her sentence trailed off when she noticed Maylin lowering her gaze, almost shrinking into herself. The shift was small, subtle, but unmistakable, and it struck Adrian like a quiet lightning bolt. He opened his mouth to ask a question, but before he could speak, Celeste stepped around the island, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. "You know," she said sweetly, "I put your mother's soup away last night. The bowl was left out for hours, and we can't risk food spoiling on the counter. It's just better for everyone if we keep the kitchen tidy." Her words were perfectly pleasant, perfectly composed, but Adrian saw the way Maylin's shoulders tightened and how quickly she busied herself with adjusting a coaster on the coffee table, though it didn't need adjusting. A knot formed in his chest. He looked at Celeste. "She can leave a bowl out. It's her home too." Celeste blinked, her smile fixed. "Of course it is. I'm only trying to help." But Maylin quickly interjected, her voice soft and frantic. "She's right, Adrian. I should be more careful. I don't want to be in the way." "You're not in the way," he said, more firmly than he intended. Both women looked at him, one with quiet fear, the other with mild surprise. A moment stretched thin in the room, fragile and trembling. Maylin lowered her head. "I'll go rest," she murmured, and slipped down the hallway toward her room. Adrian watched her go, the ache in his chest tightening further. When he turned back, Celeste was already tying her robe a little more neatly. "You're reading into things too much," she said softly. "Your mother is just adjusting. She'll be fine." But Adrian wasn't convinced. Something was happening beneath the surface, something quiet, something wrong. And now, he could feel it brushing against every corner of the home. The first threads of doubt had begun to unravel inside him. And soon, the truth would pull the rest loose. The late afternoon light slanted through the tall windows of Adrian's home office, casting quiet stripes across the walnut desk. Bellevue's sky had cleared after the morning drizzle, leaving a pale blue calm that stretched over Lake Washington. Normally, this was the hour when Adrian could settle into a rhythm, review financial projections, send a quiet email or two, finish his day with a sense of orderly progress. But today, none of his numbers aligned. None of his thoughts settled. He sat in his leather chair, elbows resting on the desk, staring at the muted glow of his computer screen without really seeing it. His mother's weary expression kept drifting back to him, the way she held her arms, as if bracing herself for something unseen, the way she apologized for simply existing. Those were not the gestures of a woman at peace. A soft chime echoed from the corner of the room, where the home's security panel emitted a quiet notification. Adrian glanced at it, expecting just another automated update. But the small screen blinked with a reminder he had forgotten. He said, "Weekly system backup complete. New footage available." Normally, he ignored it. Ever since installing the system 2 years ago, top-tier cameras, discrete angles, crystal clear audio, he had rarely reviewed the footage. The house always felt safe, predictable. But now, with a tight coil of unease in his chest, the blinking light seemed to tug at him. He rose slowly and crossed to the cabinet where the monitor was stored. A moment later, the screen flickered to life, casting a soft glow across the dim office. The interface offered its usual folders: front door, entry hall, kitchen, living room. He hovered over kitchen, feeling a pang of hesitation. He wasn't sure what he would find, but something deep within him urged him forward, not out of suspicion, but out of the fear that he had already missed too much. He clicked. The footage rewound to the day before. He sped past hours of sunlight drifting over countertops and quiet, empty rooms. Then, movement. Late afternoon. Celeste in a fitted sweater, moving briskly as she arranged wine glasses and adjusted the vase of tulips he had brought home the previous weekend. She looked composed, her movements sharp and efficient. A moment later, Maylin entered the frame carrying a small tray of dumplings she had made that morning. Her smile was gentle, hopeful. The sound came through clearly. "I made a few extras," she said softly. "Maybe you'd like some for tonight." Celeste turned with a tight smile. "That's sweet, but unnecessary. We already have dinner plans with friends." Maylin nodded, still smiling, though Adrian could see the slight fall in her shoulders. She placed the tray on the counter anyway. Seconds passed. Then Celeste moved again, this time toward the sink. She picked up the tray, paused, glanced toward the doorway to be sure no one was watching, and slid every dumpling into the garbage disposal. Adrian froze. The grinding noise echoed through the office speakers, far louder than it must have sounded in real time. Maylin stood just at the edge of the frame, barely visible, her hand pressed to her chest. She had heard it. She had stood perfectly still, witnessing her offering discarded like scraps. Celeste didn't look back. Adrian's breath left him in a slow, heavy exhale. He pressed a hand over his mouth, stunned not just by the act itself, but by the coldness, how ordinary it seemed to her. He scrubbed through more footage. Another clip appeared, this time in the hallway. Celeste blocked Maylin's path, her posture tall, her expression clipped and sharp. The audio picked up fragments. "You're leaving your things everywhere. This house isn't a community center. You can't just linger. You're making things uncomfortable." Maylin apologized, bowing her head gently. Celeste didn't soften. Adrian swallowed hard. He clicked another file, this one from the early evening. Celeste's voice, low and biting. "You need to stay out of the way when guests come. I can't have you wandering around like a lost shadow." His mother's voice, barely audible. "I only wanted to help. I didn't know." "Well, now you do." The footage ended. Adrian sank into the office chair, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly as the weight of what he had seen settled over him. Every quiet moment from the past weeks gathered in his chest, every small silence, every forced smile, every time his mother stepped lightly around the house like a guest instead of family. He had missed it. He had missed her pain, hidden in plain sight. And now the reality played out in front of him with painful clarity. As the screen dimmed back to its idle state, Adrian leaned back slowly, the room around him suddenly unfamiliar. The home he thought he had built with love and stability was unraveling, and the truth was only beginning to show its face. Night settled over Bellevue like a soft blanket, dimming the neighborhood into a quiet hush. Adrian sat in the office long after the footage ended, the glow from the monitor slowly fading as the screen went dark. The silence around him felt heavier than usual, thick, almost echoing with the voices he had just listened to. He rubbed his brow, then his eyes, feeling a deep, aching pressure behind them. It wasn't just disbelief, it was guilt. A guilt that wrapped around him like cold mist from the lake outside. He rose slowly and stepped into the hallway. The house felt different now, as though every memory of laughter or warm meals had been replaced by something fragile. He walked past the family photographs again, pictures that once made him smile. Now, they seemed to ask questions he didn't want to answer. Near the living room, he paused. One photo caught his attention. His mother standing in a sunflower field in southern Taiwan, holding a straw hat against the Sunday. She had been younger then, hopeful, working double shifts at a factory and still finding time to smile for a camera she could barely afford. Adrian touched the glass softly. He wished he could step back into that photo and tell her how deeply he appreciated all she had done, how sorry he was that he hadn't seen her suffering sooner. A soft thump echoed from upstairs, breaking his thoughts. He glanced toward the staircase. Celeste must be preparing for bed, her nightly routine as precise as always. The thought sent another ripple of unease through him. He couldn't face her, not yet, not with the footage replaying in his head like a quiet storm. He walked instead toward the kitchen, hoping to clear his mind. As he entered, he noticed something small on the counter near the sink. A porcelain spoon, set neatly beside a folded napkin. His mother must have washed it earlier. It felt like a small, wordless gesture she always made, keeping things tidy, taking care of the home even when she felt unwelcome. He lifted the spoon gently, as if it were something precious. A soft rustle came from the hallway behind him. He turned to see Rosa Delgado, his neighbor, standing at the back entrance, holding a small basket of oranges. Rosa was in her late 50s, with warm eyes and a slight stoop from years working at the local community center. Adrian had given her a spare key long ago so she could water the plants when they traveled. "Oh, I didn't mean to startle you," she said, stepping inside lightly. "I knocked, but I guess no one heard. I brought these from my garden." Adrian forced a small smile. "Thank you, Rosa. You're always thoughtful." She hesitated, glancing toward the hallway where Maylin's room was. "Is your mother doing all right? I haven't seen her outside in a while. She usually says hello when she sees me." Her simple question pierced deeper than she could know. "She's trying," Adrian exhaled slowly. "But something isn't right. Have you noticed anything unusual? Anything at all?" Rosa's expression softened with concern. She lowered her voice. "I didn't want to assume, but yes, I've noticed she seems quieter and more tense, like she's afraid to take up space." Adrian's throat tightened. "Did she say anything to you?" "No," Rosa said gently. "But sometimes you don't need words to know someone's hurting." Her kindness only deepened the ache inside him. Rosa placed the basket on the counter and touched his arm with a gentle steadiness. "You're a good son, Adrian. Just remember, sometimes the truth hides in the quietest corners. But once you see it, you can't turn away." He nodded, swallowing the heaviness in his chest. After Rosa left, the house felt different again, not empty, but expectant, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Adrian headed upstairs to his room, each step quiet on the carpeted stairs. The hallway lights glowed softly, casting warm shadows onto the framed photographs. In his bedroom, Celeste sat at her vanity, brushing her hair with slow, meticulous strokes. She looked up when he entered, her eyes bright beneath the lamplight. "There you are," she said softly. "You were gone so long. Everything all right?" He stood in the doorway for a moment, observing her, the carefully arranged silk robe, the polished movements, the way she always filled a room with practiced poise. But now, something in her presence felt out of place, like a piece of furniture moved half an inch too far to the left. "I had work to finish," he replied quietly. Celeste smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Adrian looked at her one last time before turning off the lights. The truth he had uncovered lay between them now, unseen but undeniable, settling into the room like a shadow that refused to leave. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the memory of those videos replayed once more: his mother's bowed head, her soft apologies, the sound of the garbage disposal grinding away her food. And in the stillness of the night, one realization pressed against his heart. What he had seen could not be unseen, and the path ahead would no longer be the same. A soft gray morning settled over Bellevue as Adrian stood alone in the kitchen, waiting for the kettle to warm. The room was quiet, too quiet for a house meant to hold comfort. When he opened a cabinet for a mug, he paused. Another small paper crane lay tucked neatly beside the bowls, the second one in 2 days. He held it gently, feeling an old ache stir. His mother folded cranes when something weighed on her heart. "One for hope, one for courage," she used to whisper. The kettle clicked off, breaking his thoughts, but not the heaviness behind them. The back door creaked. Rosa stepped in with a foil container of warm tamales. "For your mama," she said kindly. But when she saw Adrian's face, her smile softened. "What's troubling you, mijo?" He hesitated. "Rosa, have you noticed anything between Celeste and my mother?" Rosa didn't answer right away. Instead, she touched his arm the way someone does when they knows the truth might hurt. "Your mother is kind," she said gently. "Some people take advantage of that, and she's the type who hides her pain, so no one worries." Before Adrian could say more, Celeste came down the stairs, polished, composed. "Rosa, good morning," she sang lightly. "Dropping off breakfast?" "For May Lynn," Rosa replied, her tone polite but steady. "I'll make sure she gets it," Celeste answered, smiling just a little too sweetly. Rosa gave Adrian a look, a quiet warning, before slipping out the door. When they were alone, Celeste asked, "So, what were you two talking about?" "Mom," Adrian said simply. "Rosa thinks she's been keeping to herself too much." Celeste waved the thought off. "She's just getting older. You're overthinking." But Adrian wasn't overthinking. Not anymore. The cranes, the silence, Rosa's hesitation, it all formed a pattern he could no longer ignore. As Celeste moved through the living room, straightening what didn't need straightening, Adrian felt something settle inside him, a slow, steady certainty. Something was wrong in this house, and he had to face it. Later that afternoon, a soft rain began tapping against the windows. Adrian checked on his mother, expecting to find her reading or listening to old Mandarin songs. Instead, he found the room dim, the curtains half closed. Maylin sat at her desk, folding another crane with careful, trembling fingers. He stepped inside quietly. "Mom, you okay?" She startled only slightly, but enough for him to notice. She closed the crane in her palm like it was something she needed to hide. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just keeping my hands busy." Adrian sat beside her. "You've made 3 of these in 2 days. Her smile was polite, practiced. Old habits. But her eyes told a different story. They held that same tired shimmer he remembered from his childhood, the look she wore in those years when she worked double shifts and never wanted him to worry. Before he could speak, Celeste called from downstairs, her voice bright and rehearsed. "Adrian, your mother's tea is getting cold. Should I bring it up?" Maylin stiffened. That tiny reaction, barely a breath, spoke louder than words. "I'll handle it," Adrian called back. Silence returned. Maylin smoothed the crane's wings, her hands unsteady. "Mom," he said softly, "has Celeste said something to you? Or done something?" She hesitated, just a heartbeat, but for his mother, that was enough to mean everything. "Don't trouble yourself," she whispered. "This house, it needs peace." Peace. The way she said it broke something in him. He reached for her hand, warm and small in his. "You don't have to protect me from the truth." Her eyes drifted away toward the window, toward years of swallowing hurt. "Some things are easier to endure quietly," she murmured, "than to become a burden." Those words settled deep inside him, as heavy as the gray rain outside. He knew then that this wasn't just about folded paper cranes. It wasn't about aging or loneliness. Something darker had taken root under his own roof. And Adrian finally, painfully felt the weight of knowing he could no longer look away. The next morning, Bellevue woke under a crisp sky gold light, brushing across roofs and quiet lawns. Adrian left for work later than usual, his mind still tangled with his mother's trembling hands and the paper cranes hidden like silent confessions. The office buzzed softly around him, but he moved through it on autopilot, half listening to updates, half dreading what he might find at home. By lunchtime, he stood in his glass office overlooking Lake Washington, staring at the calm blue water. He kept hearing Maylin's voice. "Some things are easier to endure quietly." That sentence clung to him like a weight. Unable to shake it off, Adrian texted Rosa, "Have you seen my mom today?" Her reply came fast. "Yes, she looks tired, quiet. Something is wrong, Maijo." He didn't need more than that. When he returned home early, he found Rosa at the dining table polishing silverware. The moment she saw him, she set the cloth down and stood straighter, as if bracing herself. "Is she all right?" he asked. Rosa hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Your mama doesn't complain, but she is shrinking into herself. That happens when someone feels unwelcome." A quiet dread crept into him. "Do you think Celeste?" Rosa lifted a hand gently, as though choosing every word. "I think your mother is afraid of upsetting your marriage, and I think Celeste knows that." Before he could respond, footsteps sounded from the hallway. Celeste appeared, poised as ever, carrying a tray lavender tea, arranged neatly with a biscuit on the side. "Oh, Adrian, you're home early." Her smile was bright, but didn't reach her eyes. "I was just taking this to your mother." She skipped breakfast again. Rosa stepped back, withdrawing politely, but not before casting Adrian a meaningful glance. He followed Celeste up the stairs, watching how she adjusted her expression, before knocking lightly on his mother's door. "Tea time," she chimed. But the moment Celeste entered, Maylin's shoulders drew inward, her hands folding together in her lap. That tiny gesture, barely noticeable, tightened something in Adrian's chest. Celeste set the tray down. "You need to eat more, Maylin. It's not good for Adrian if you're not taking care of yourself." Adrian caught at the subtle edge under the sweetness. Not loud, not cruel, but sharp enough to bruise someone gentle. Maylin nodded quickly. "Yes, I'm sorry." "Sorry? For what?" The apology hit him like a blow. He finally understood. His mother wasn't just quiet, she was scared. His breath steadied, slower, heavier. Something inside him began to shift, a resolve forming, quiet but unmistakable. He would not ignore this anymore. That evening, the house settled into its usual quiet. But Adrian felt every sound differently, the clink of dishes, the low hum of the heater, the faint shuffle of his mother's slippers across the hallway carpet. Everything seemed sharper now, clearer. He found Mei Lin in the small sunroom, sitting in her favorite chair with a blanket over her knees. The late-day light washed over her gently, softening the worry lines at the corners of her eyes. She looked peaceful from afar, but when he stepped closer, he noticed the untouched cup of tea on the table beside her cold. "Mom?" he asked softly. She looked up, offering a tired smile. "You're home early again. I wanted to check on you." He sat beside her. "I feel like you've been holding something in." Her hands tightened slightly around the blanket. "Adrian, this is your home, your marriage. I don't want to interfere. I don't want to trouble anyone." There you go again," he murmured. "Calling yourself trouble." Maylin gazed out the window, watching the wind ripple through the cedar trees. When people get older, they become easier to overlook. It's natural. She paused, then added more quietly, "And I don't want to be the reason your life becomes complicated." His heart clenched at that. She sounded so small, so willing to disappear. He reached over and took her hand gently. "You're not a burden. You never were, not once." Before she could respond, Celeste appeared in the doorway, her tone carefully light. "Everything okay in here?" Adrian turned toward her, calm but steady. "Yes, Mom and I are just talking." Celeste's eyes lingered on him, a beat too long, as if she were measuring something. Then she gave a polished smile. "Well, let me know if either of you need anything." When she walked away, her steps were soft, but her shadows seemed to stretch long behind her. Maylin let out a breath she hadn't seemed aware she was holding. "She worries you," she whispered, almost apologetically. "I don't want you to think badly of her because of me." But Adrian wasn't thinking badly of Celeste because of his mother. He was thinking badly of her because of what he had witnessed. A truth had surfaced, unmistakable and heavy. His mother was adjusting herself, shrinking to keep peace with someone who didn't deserve her gentleness. He watched her fold the blanket edges with trembling fingers and felt the quiet storm in his chest grow stronger. Something had to change, and soon. The next morning broke with a pale winter sun, the kind that brightened Bellevue without ever quite warming it. Adrian brewed coffee in the quiet kitchen, letting the steady drip give him something to focus on. He'd barely slept, replaying every small moment, the cranes, the apologies, the way his mother's shoulders tightened whenever Celeste walked into a room. He needed clarity, something tangible. After dropping into his office at work, he stepped into the building's small security room, a space he rarely thought about. The guard greeted him kindly, surprised to see the CEO standing there. "Morning, Mr. Hale. Everything okay?" Adrian nodded. "I just need access to a few feeds from the home system." The guard helped him set up on a monitor. Adrian logged in with his own credentials, his pulse steady but heavier than usual. When the first recording loaded, he leaned forward. The footage showed the upstairs hallway. Celeste passed by with a laundry basket, glanced at Maylin's door, and paused, her expression shifting faster than a blink. Her smile faded into something sharp. She whispered something through the crack in the door, voice too low for the camera to capture. A moment later, the door closed quietly, but not before Adrian saw his mother's hand, trembling slightly as she pulled it shut. He clicked into another clip. In the kitchen, Maylin was preparing a small bowl of congee. Celeste entered behind her, her posture relaxed, but her eyes cold. She moved a scented candle closer to the stove and wrinkled her nose dramatically. Maylin immediately turned off the burner, bowing her head, apologizing in silence. It wasn't yelling. It wasn't physical, but it was cruel, calculated, controlled. This was the kind of unkindness that left no bruises, except the invisible kind. Adrian exhaled slowly, his chest tight. The worst part wasn't the footage itself. It was realizing how long he'd been blind to it, how easily someone kind could be silenced under the guise of keeping the peace. He sat for a while, elbows on his knees, letting the truth settle. His mother had been trying to endure quietly, and Celeste had counted on that quiet. He closed the laptop. The decision he had avoided for weeks was no longer avoidable. When he stepped outside, the cold air bit at his skin, waking him fully. He texted Rosa, asking her to check on Maylin in the afternoon. She replied almost instantly, "Of course, your mama is not alone." Those words steadied him. He got into his car, started the engine, and looked out across the shimmering surface of Lake Washington. The world felt clearer now, harder, but clearer. It was time to confront the truth and to protect the person who had always protected him. That evening, the house seemed quieter than usual, too quiet for a home that was supposed to hold laughter and the comfort of family. Adrian stepped inside and felt immediately that something was off. He found Rosa in the kitchen putting away groceries, her shoulders drawn tight. "Rosa?" he asked. "Everything all right?" She hesitated. "Your mama. She's in the laundry room." "The laundry room? At this hour?" Rosa nodded, worry clouding her expression. "I brought her soup. She said she didn't want to eat at the table today." A cold ache opened in his chest. "Why?" Rosa lowered her eyes. "Because she didn't want to disturb the peace." Those were her exact words. He didn't wait another second. The laundry room door was half closed. When he pushed it open gently, he found Maylin sitting on a small wooden stool, a folding table pulled close, her dinner placed neatly in front of her. No light except the dim bulb overhead. The room smelled faintly of detergent. It felt like a place for chores, not for someone's mother. "Mom." His voice cracked before he could stop it. She looked up, startled, then tried to smile. "I didn't want to trouble anyone." "It's Keter here." He knelt beside her. "Who told you to eat here?" "No one," she whispered quickly. "I just thought maybe it's easier this way." Her eyes darted toward the hallway reflexively, fearfully. Adrian saw it. The kind of look someone develops only after months of being made to feel small. He took her cold hands into his. "You don't belong in here. You shouldn't be alone in a room like this, not in your own home." Before she could reply, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Celeste appeared, perfectly composed, holding a glass of wine. Her smile was practiced, effortless. "Oh, Adrian," she said lightly. "I told your mother she could eat wherever she felt comfortable. Some people prefer quiet." Maylin flinched at the sound of her voice. That tiny movement felt like a blade to his heart. Adrian rose slowly. "She prefers quiet," he said, "because she's afraid of upsetting you." Celeste's expression tightened for a fraction of a second before she smoothed it away. "You're imagining things. She chose this." But Adrian wasn't imagining anything. Not anymore. Not after the footage. Not after seeing fear flicker across his mother's eyes at the sound of Celeste's heels. The silence between them grew heavy, charged. Rosa watching from the kitchen doorway, crossed her arms gently, as if standing guard. Adrian looked at his mother, then back at Celeste. A line had been crossed. A truth had been uncovered, and the man who once ignored the quiet now heard it louder than ever. This was the moment his heart shifted fully, irrevocably. He would not let his mother shrink anymore. He would not let this woman rewrite what home meant. Something in him settled with painful clarity. This could not continue. Adrian woke before dawn, long before the first hint of pale light touched the windows. The house felt different now, like the quiet itself had begun telling a story he could no longer pretend not to hear. He put on a sweater and walked downstairs, every step heavy with decisions he wasn't ready to admit aloud. He found one of the cranes on the coffee table, another one, this one smaller. The folds a little uneven, made in worry, not peace. He held it in his palm and felt something inside him harden into resolve. That morning, Rosa arrived early. She set her purse down quietly and offered him a look that seemed to ask the question she didn't dare voice. "Is she awake?" he asked. Rosa nodded. "Barely ate last night. She's pretending she did." He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, he said the words he had avoided for too long. "I need to know everything, Rosa. Not hints, not pieces, the truth." Rosa hesitated. Her loyalty to the family was deep, but she finally spoke. "Your mother has been afraid of causing trouble since she moved in. And Celeste, she knows that. She talks sweet when you're here, cold when you're not shouting, not hitting, just little cuts that add up." Rosa swallowed. "She moves your mother's things, criticizes her cooking, tells her she makes the house smell old. She calls her fragile in front of people, but slow behind closed doors." Every word landed heavy. "And she tells her," Rosa added softly, "that you're stressed enough already, that if she wants you to be happy, she should stay quiet." Adrian felt the room tilt, not with surprise, but with the weight of finally hearing aloud what he already knew. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, though he knew the answer. Rosa's eyes softened. "Because your mother begged me not to. She didn't want to be the reason your marriage cracked." He nodded slowly, jaw tightening. Just then, Maylin appeared at the foot of the stairs, small and gentle in her soft cardigan, her hands clasped together as if she were preparing an apology she hadn't yet spoken. Her smile wavered when she saw them. "Good morning," she whispered. Adrian walked toward her. "Mom, you don't have to wake up this early." "Oh, I didn't sleep much," she said lightly, brushing it off. "Old bones. Nothing serious." But he saw the truth in her eyes, the exhaustion, the fear of being too much, the quiet way she made herself smaller every day. He guided her to the kitchen table. "Sit. I'll make breakfast." She immediately shook her head. No, let me. I don't want to be a burden." That word again, burden. It threaded through the room like a shadow. Rosa stepped back, giving them space, but watching with the tenderness of someone who had seen too much. Adrian set the crane gently on the table between them. "Mom," he said softly, "you don't fold these unless something is hurting." Her hands froze. For a heartbeat, everything was still: the rain against the windows, the hum of the refrigerator, Rosa's breathing from the corner of the room. Maylin looked at the crane, then at him, and her eyes glistened the way they had when he was a child, and she tried to hide how tired she was from working double shifts. "Some things," she whispered, "are easier to carry quietly." He covered her hands with his. "Not anymore," he said. "Not for you." Later that afternoon, the sky darkened with a slow-moving winter cloud, casting long shadows across the living room. Adrian sat at his desk in the corner, the security footage open on his laptop, not because he needed to watch it again, but because he needed the truth in front of him, clear and undeniable. He clicked through a few brief clips, none dramatic, none loud, just the quiet erosion of dignity, one dismissive look, one cold comment, one intentional pause long enough to make his mother shrink. It was the kind of cruelty that pretended to be civility. He heard the front door open. Celeste's voice flowed into the house, a bright, breezy tone she saved for public places and moments she wanted to control. "Honey, I'm home." Adrian didn't move. She walked into the living room, heels soft against the hardwood floor, shopping bag in hand. The moment she saw him, she lit up with her practiced smile. "You're back early again? Everything okay at work?" He closed the laptop gently. I worked from home today. Oh? Her eyes flicked to the laptop, just a subtle dart, but enough to show nervousness beneath the charm. Looking at something important? He held her gaze. Yes. She laughed lightly, brushing invisible dust from her coat. Well, I hope it wasn't too stressful. I picked up a new candle for the house. Something fresher. I thought it might help. You know, she paused delicately. With certain smells. A chill went through him. Celeste continued, as if reading from a script. Is your mother resting? I told her earlier she looked tired. Poor thing. Maybe age is catching up with her. Adrian stood slowly. Don't speak about her like that. Her smile thinned. I'm only being honest. No, he said quietly. You're being cruel. For the first time in a long time, her polished mask cracked only slightly, but unmistakably. Cruel? She repeated, voice sharpening. I have been nothing but patient with that woman. That woman, he echoed, every muscle tightening. She's my mother. Celeste stepped closer, lowering her voice. And she's been making this house tense. I've tried to help. I've tried to guide her. But she refuses to learn, refuses to adapt. Someone has to keep things running. Oh, by humiliating her? She humiliates herself. Celeste snapped before biting the inside of her cheek, as if realizing she'd let the wrong thing slip. Across the hallway, Rosa froze mid-step, listening in silence. Adrian felt everything in him shift calm, steady, certain. Celeste, he said, you need to understand something. My mother is not the one making this house tense. She opened her mouth to argue, but footsteps sounded behind them. Madeline appeared at the top of the stairs, small and fragile, clutching the railing. Adrian, her voice quivered. I can go to my room if I'm in the way. His heart broke cleanly inside him. Celeste turned, her smile reattaching itself like clockwork. Oh, Maylin! No one said you were in the way. But Adrian stepped forward, his voice firm. Mom, you're not in the way. Not in this house. Not in my life. Silence fell. Maylin's eyes shimmered, overwhelmed by a truth she hadn't heard in too long. Celeste stiffened, sensing the shift in the air, the edge of a decision forming, one that frightened her far more than she let show. And Adrian felt it too. The moment of confrontation was coming, and this time, he would not look away. The storm finally arrived that night, wind brushing against the windows, carrying the wet scent of winter rain. The house felt heavy, as if holding its breath. Adrian stood at the foot of the stairs, listening to the creak of wood and the quiet hum of appliances. For the first time in months, he wasn't avoiding the truth. He was walking straight toward it. Maylin sat on the couch, wrapped in her soft cardigan, hands folded carefully in her lap. She looked small in the wide living room, like someone trying to take up as little space as possible. A third crane rested beside her. She had folded it from the corner of an old grocery receipt. When Adrian sat down next to her, she offered a tiny smile. It helps me stay calm, she whispered, touching the crane's wing. He took a breath. Mom, you don't need to stay calm. Not for this. Thunder rolled softly in the distance. She looked at him with an expression he hadn't seen since he was a boy, an expression that begged him not to worry, not to see how much she was hurting. Adrian, she murmured, your wife is good to you. I don't want to make things worse between you two. You aren't, he said steady, almost quiet. You never have. She bowed her head. I just want your life to be happy. I know, he whispered, but not at the cost of yours. Before she could reply, footsteps sounded from the hallway. Celeste appeared in the archway, arms crossed, posture stiff with a smile she no longer bothered, making believable. Is everything all right here? She asked, voice smooth but cold beneath. Adrian stood. We need to talk. Celeste's eyes narrowed slightly. Now? I was about to run a bath. It can't wait. She hesitated, sensing something different in him, an edge she had never heard before. But she gestured lightly. Then talk. Rosa hovered quietly in the dining room, pretending to arrange placemats, but clearly listening. Even the house seemed to lean in. Adrian drew a slow breath. I saw the home footage today. Celeste's expression changed in a blink, first surprise, then annoyance, then a brittle kind of defiance. You checked the cameras? Yes. So you're spying on me? She let out a dry laugh. How generous. I saw how you treat her, he said, voice steady like a held line. Not loud, not physical, but cruel, constantly. Celeste's mask cracked. She stepped closer, voice low and sharp. She makes things difficult, Adrian. She clutters the house. She cooks strange food. She walks around nervous like I'm supposed to tiptoe around her anxiety. She walks around nervous, he said, because you made her afraid. Celeste scoffed. She's overreacting. She's old, sensitive. Maylin flinched at that word. Adrian felt something shift inside him, a quiet, final click of truth. She's my mother, he said, and she deserves respect. Celeste's voice rose slightly, frustration slipping through. And what about me? Do I deserve to live in a house that smells like ginger and soy sauce? Do I deserve to feel like a stranger in my own home? You felt like a stranger, he replied softly, because you made this house unkind. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the man who finally saw and the woman who finally realized she had lost control of the story. Then Celeste said the words that sealed everything between them. Adrian, it's her or me. I won't live like this another day. M. The rain outside struck the windows harder. The house grew still. Maylin closed her eyes, as if already preparing to disappear for his sake. But Adrian finally knew clearly, painfully, what he had to choose. And for the first time, he chose the person who had never stopped choosing him. The living room felt suspended in time rain tapping steadily against the windows, the warm lamp casting soft gold across the carpet. Adrian stood between the two women who shaped his life in opposite ways. One who had given him everything without asking for anything in return, and one who demanded everything while giving very little back. Celeste's arms were crossed tightly, her chin tilted in a defiant angle. I said what I said, she repeated. It's her or me. Maylin lowered her head, voice trembling. I can leave tonight if it keeps peace. I don't want to cause any trouble. No? Adrian's voice cut through the room, calm but unshakable. You're not leaving. Celeste blinked, then let out a short, sharp laugh. You can't be serious. I am. His tone held a finality she had never heard from him. Maylin touched his sleeve gently. Adrian, don't hurt your marriage because of me. I'm old. I can adapt. He turned to her, eyes soft. Mom, you adapted your whole life. For me. For this country. For every room you walked into. He swallowed. You don't have to shrink anymore. Her eyes glistened. Celeste stepped forward. So that's it? You're choosing her over your wife? I'm choosing what's right, he said quietly. I'm choosing kindness over cruelty. Family over fear. The words settled like warm light across the room. Celeste's face hardened. If I walk out that door, Adrian, you will regret it. Everyone will know you threw your marriage away for a woman who can barely speak English. Oh. Rosa, standing quietly near the dining table, finally spoke calm, steady. Senora, the only shame here is how you treated someone who did nothing but love her son. Celeste stiffened, but didn't reply. Adrian walked to the coat closet, lifted her overnight bag, the one she took to yoga retreats and spa weekends, and set it gently in front of her. You need to go, Celeste, tonight. For a moment, she looked stunned. Then anger surged through her features, sharp and hot. She grabbed the handle of the bag, heels clicking furiously toward the door. You're throwing away the best thing that ever happened to you, she snapped. Adrian shook his head. No, I'm saving the best thing that ever happened to me. She stared at him, speechless, then slammed the door behind her. The echo lingered for a long, quiet moment. When the house finally fell still again, Maylin sank onto the couch, trembling. I'm sorry, she whispered. You lost so much because of me. Hey. Adrian knelt in front of her, taking her hands gently. I didn't lose anything. I found what matters. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes, soft, shining, relieved. Rosa brought a blanket and draped it over her shoulders. You're safe now, she murmured. For the first time in months, Maylin's breath came out steady, no tremor in it. The storm outside began to ease, rain softening into a gentle drizzle. Adrian sat beside his mother. She leaned her head lightly on his shoulder, the way she used to when he was a boy who had bad dreams. "Adrian," she whispered. "Yes, Mom. I think this house is finally warm." He closed his eyes, letting the weight of her words settle into him. For the first time in a long time, the home felt like home again. Not perfect, not pristine, but honest, safe, and filled with the quiet, steady love that had carried them through every hardship. And as the storm clouds drifted away, morning light began to gather at the edges of the sky, like a promise of gentler days ahead. In the quiet after the storm, Adrian finally understood that a home isn't built from perfect rooms or polished moments. It's shaped by the people who choose to love us through every season of our lives. Watching his mother rest peacefully on the living room couch, wrapped in the soft glow of a table lamp, he felt something settle inside him, something like grace, something like coming home after being lost for far too long. And perhaps that is how many of us learn, slowly, painfully, but with a heart that still hopes to do better the next time. If you felt this story carried a little truth, press 1. If it didn't quite resonate or you have thoughts to share, press 0. The lesson here is simple, yet it holds the weight of a lifetime. Unconditional love has the quiet power to reshape our days, mend what was broken, and light the way when we can't see the path ourselves. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, especially those who once carried us through their own storms, because family, at its best, is not measured by money or status, but by the kindness we choose even when no one is watching. And like the warm porch light that stays on through a long winter night, a single gentle act, offering a seat at the dinner table, listening without judgment, making room for someone's presence, can guide us back to what truly matters. Many older Americans remember Sunday dinners where conversations carried more love than the food on the plates. In moments like those, we are reminded that belonging is a gift we give each other. Take a moment to breathe with this story. Let it rest beside you, the way an old friend might sit on a quiet afternoon. And if it touched your heart, even in a small way, feel free to share it with someone who needs a little warmth tonight. After all, stories only become more meaningful when they bring people closer together.